Good morning. We are live. Thank you for joining us on our series Sustainable Design Chats. I'm your host, Alex Shield, and today we are going to be talking about eco-friendly art. So let's see. Here we go. Hello, good morning.
Good morning. How you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing well. Excited to be here.
Yeah, okay, this morning we are speaking with Jenny McCarty. She is an ecologist, a biologist, a very talented artist, and she is the founder of Sage Leaf Studios, where she creates eco-friendly art for nature lovers. I'm so glad to chat with you today.
Thanks, Alex. I'm glad to talk with you too.
So I want to start by saying, so I'm a sustainable interior designer, and what I do is for every single item that I use on a project, I do a ton of research and I really thoughtfully source all of these pieces. And art was always something that I found, it's very, very subjective, right? Art and people have their own tastes and sort of what they like and what they want to have in their home. And for me, sourcing sustainable art was supporting local artists and small businesses, not going to the big box stores and buying a giant canvas that, there's tens of thousands of prints of them that exist. Mm-hmm. But I never went much further than that. So I didn't really consider, not that I didn't consider, but I guess I wasn't really looking at what materials are they using to create this art. I was like, you know what? I'm supporting a local artist. This is wonderful. It's beautiful. But there's a lot more to it than that. So can you explain to us what is eco-friendly art?
You bet. And I think that a lot of people probably share your sentiments that when they're thinking about art, as long as they're buying it locally, they're checking a box. And I don't think that we think deeper than that. And eco-friendly art really is art that does not have negative impacts on the planet. So what it's made of, how it's made in a way that does not negatively affect our environment. You could even go further to think about sustainable art, which thinks about every step of the art making process, from even what paintbrushes you use, what tubes the paint comes in, how the paper is made, and then how that art might be thrown away or disposed of long into the future, and how that's brought back into the earth and the soil. So there are a lot of ways to think about sustainable and eco-friendly art.
There are definitely a lot of things to consider. Can you tell us a little bit about sort of the materials that you use in terms of the paints, I guess your canvases that you use, your paintbrushes, all of that?
Yeah, so I have a background in biology and ecology. And so I spent 10 years growing my career in the sciences, and mostly around wildlife conservation and how humans and animals can live in harmony on our planet, so to speak. And so I left art for 10 years. And when I came back to art last year, I realized that all the art that I had done in middle school and high school was actually really harmful to our planet, specifically our waterways, our landfills. And so I started looking into all these different ways to create more eco-friendly art. And I have narrowed it down really to every step of the life cycle of my art. So the paintbrushes that I use are all Forest Stewardship Council certified, which means that they're made from trees and wood sources that are sustainably managed. They don't come wrapped in exorbitant amounts of single-use plastics. The paints I use, I actually, historically, when I was much younger, I used a lot of oils and a lot of acrylics. And when I came back to art, I realized how harmful those were, not just to the planet, but also my own health. I didn't realize that acrylics off-gas formaldehyde. Like, I had no idea. Why did nobody tell me that? And formaldehyde is a carcinogen. It can cause cancer, especially of the lungs. It's been shown to damage eyes. And I had no one ever told me that before. Also, for instance, I'm sure many of us who love art or did art in any grade school, we all poured our paints down the sink. And that's not good. Yeah, it's not good for our water treatment plants. They can't pull it out. It ends up in our streams and our waterways. And we all hear about these microplastics accumulating in fish and other species, especially in the oceans. And then we eat them, and those accumulate in our bodies. And those are things that come from paints as well. So I transitioned to watercolor paint. Across the board, it really is the most eco-friendly paint out there. And you can go even deeper now to get watercolors that are just made purely of soil. They're not mined. They don't have harmful metals in them like cadmiums. So you can really take eco-friendly art as far as you want. And then my papers that I use are all Forest Stewardship Council certified papers. They don't use animal binders, so they're all vegan. Papers are bound usually with historically a gelatin that's from animal fat, but a lot of companies have come up with some great alternatives to that. And then when it comes to packaging art, there's so much single-use plastic like bubble wrap and tapes and plastic sleeves that, you know, protects the art. And it's really important to get that piece of art from point A to point B where it hangs beautifully on someone's wall. But where does that plastic end up? Usually in a landfill or an ocean somewhere. So I think that art really is a representation of our values. And so specifically you and your community, when you're designing these sustainable spaces, if you've got a piece of art on the wall that maybe didn't come 100% sustainable, it's like, well, is that a true representation of everybody's values?
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned a couple things that I want to touch on. One of the things, if we look at the materials, you had mentioned sort of the bindings containing animal products. But I think in a chat you and I had last week, I think you had mentioned in paintbrushes as well, right?
Yes. A lot of people don't realize that a lot of paintbrushes are actually made from animal hair. So like weasel hair, squirrel hair, even horse hair. And I think I had mentioned you, I think it's like morbidly ironic and a little meta if someone's going to paint a squirrel with a squirrel paintbrush.
Yeah.
You know, it's a little dark and disturbing.
Yeah.
So there are really great sustainable and synthetic alternatives out there. And some people are even now playing with plant-based types of bristles on brushes. So we'll see where the industry goes.
Okay, so I want to talk to you about packaging. We touched on it a little bit, but I have two young boys, and for Easter a few years ago, I wanted to buy wooden eggs that I could refill because I didn't want like the little chocolate eggs with like the tin foil,
Yeah.
and I didn't want the plastic eggs, you know, for many reasons. But I was like, oh, I'm gonna get like beautifully handcrafted like little wooden eggs that you can open, and I'll fill them with stuff, and it'll be so fun. And I had to do a lot of research because there were a lot of like iffy, like, yeah, but where is this coming from and who's making it? And I don't know. Anyway, so I found this like reputable sort of sustainable company, and they had these beautiful wooden eggs, and they say they're all handmade. And I was so excited, and I bought them. And when they arrived, each egg was individually wrapped in plastic. They're wooden eggs, like they're not gonna break in the like they're thick,
Yeah.
hard wooden eggs. They're not gonna break. And it was thin
Right.
plastic. It wasn't like bubble wrap. It was just each one was wrapped in plastic, and I learned that they were made in China. And I was so disappointed because I had
Yeah.
tried so hard to support a local, sustainable business, but there are so many steps in every process from, you know, when you're conceptualizing a design to the actual, what you just said, the materials, the paints, the paintbrushes, like everything you're using to actually create the art. And then you need to, you know, package it up and ship it. You don't want it to get damaged in shipping. So can you tell me a little bit more about how you package your products and how you ship your art? So for those of you who don't know, Jenny is an artist, but she also she creates prints, and she sells them on her website, and she'll ship them to you. But so tell us a little bit about that process.
Yeah, so it's actually twofold. As an artist, I do create prints like you mentioned, and I work with a printer that's based in the UK, and they've got much higher sustainability standards in the UK than they do here in the US. And so that's one of the reasons I chose this company. And they make prints all with Forest Stewardship Council certified papers, water-based inks, so there's no alcohol or toxins in those inks. And then their shipping practice, they use sustainable packaging. So everything I've ordered from them, nothing comes in single-use plastic. It's all cardboard. If it does come in a plastic, they clearly mark that it's a biodegradable plastic.
Okay.
And that's something that I do if I'm shipping an original as well. I think it's really important for organizations, companies to acknowledge that if they're using what looks like plastic, that it's biodegradable. If it is, you know, if those eggs had come to you from someone local and it was wrapped in what looked like was plastic and you didn't think you were getting plastic, if they had put a sticker on there, if it was biodegradable plastic, you know, that lets you know and reassures you that
I
this
would have
is a
felt
sustainable.
a little better.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I actually use sleeves from a company called Clear Bags, and they're biodegradable. And so all my originals that come from my home are packaged in a biodegradable plastic, plant-based plastic sleeve. So someone could easily put it in their garden and it would hopefully dissolve in a year or so back into the earth.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I wanted to touch on as well, you were talking about microplastics in paint, and I don't have it in front of me, but I just heard a statistic, excuse me, this week about the biggest contributor to microplastics in our oceans come from paint. So, I mean, that's not just like, that's not just the artist painting. I mean, that's, you know, you're painting your walls and, you know, it's, there's lots of different kinds of paints, obviously, but that's sort of the biggest contributor to microplastics.
Yep.
And I wanted to bring this back to the reel you posted this morning about microplastics, which, you know, with Earth Day coming up on Monday, you touched on a couple of points. Do you want to go over that quickly?
Sure. Sure, I'd be happy to. So I'm really excited. Earth Day is just around the corner. It officially starts tomorrow, though official Earth Day is on Monday, but everyone celebrates all weekend long. And this year's theme, each year there's a global theme, is plastics versus planet. And so really bringing awareness to people and how plastics are everywhere in our life and what we can do to reduce single-use plastics. And so I posted a reel this morning highlighting how plastics really are pervasive in every step of someone's art practice, and maybe what are some things you can do to reduce that. And first and foremost, I want to mention there was some great commentary on there and people being like, I didn't realize that I was even doing this, and people being really interested in learning how to do better. I want to highlight that when it comes to sustainability and eco-friendly, it's not about doing it perfectly right up front. It's really about just making small intentional changes over time. And if you've got a plastic watercolor case, for instance, don't go throw it in the trash and go buy something new. Use that plastic watercolor case for the rest of its usable life, and then figure out how to properly dispose of it later. Reduce your consumption in general. So it's not about doing everything perfectly. It's about making informed decisions right up front. And in that reel, I talked about a lot of things we've talked about. So how to maybe reduce plastics in your paintbrushes, plastics in the paints that you choose, the papers that you choose, and obviously the packaging, which is a big source of plastic. In that reel, I'm holding this massive wad of plastic that came wrapped around a 10-inch by 10-inch little canvas test print out of Texas. And I was shocked. I'm in my bike clothes and I'm sweaty, and I had to take a video of it because it was so just shocking. And I ended up emailing that company and being like, hey, could I get this with less plastic? I'll pay extra. And they were like, no, sorry, we don't do that. So I think that's another big message is we can, as consumers, encourage companies to start to make changes too. Send them emails like those eggs that came wrapped in plastic. You know, send them an email and be like, hey, I don't think this was necessary. Maybe send it wrapped in tissue paper next time.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's really important to do what we can with the information we have and the knowledge we have. And like you said, and not, you know, go changing everything right away, but just be conscious of the impact of, you know, our consumption and do the best with the knowledge we have. So, okay, can we just like rewind a little bit? You did touch a little bit on your background, but can you tell us a bit more about you and why you started this business?
Yeah, so I mentioned I have degrees in biology and ecology, and I actually, this is perfect timing because we're going into Mental Health Month in May. Last year I was really burnt out. I had been working too hard. My husband and I got married. We were renovating a house, just the two of us. And I had been talking with my coach at work, and she said, Jenny, you obviously can't cut back on any of these things, but how do you manage your energy? And is there anything that you do where you can find flow that gives us quick bursts of energy quickly? And I was like, well, I find flow really easily when I paint and when I draw, but I haven't really done that in 10 years. And she's like, well, go pick up a paintbrush. So I started painting again, and I really couldn't stop. I was painting like gangbusters for 3 months straight, and realized that I missed doing art and wanted to try it again. But I also wanted to share my knowledge. I could combine my knowledge of art and ecology and sustainability and maybe change the world for the better in a little small way in my little corner of the world. And so that's how we're here. I'm very lucky. My husband's very supportive. I want to mention I get to do this and he keeps me fed.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. That's amazing. That's a great supportive husband.
Yes.
You're lucky.
That's great.
So one more thing I wanted to ask you is, I noticed on your website that you donate a portion of your proceeds to wildlife conservation. So why is this important to you?
Yeah, I think it's really important. So I donate 10% of all proceeds before tax dollars to wildlife conservation. And it's really important to me because I've spent a lot of time in the wildlife conservation field. I've worked with big game in Africa. I've worked with a lot of endangered species here in the United States. And I just really value the work that those organizations are doing, and I think it's really important. I also think it's really important to acknowledge too that like my art practice is not perfect. I'm not perfect in my sustainability. I'm learning something new every day, and so that 10% helps offset any small negative impact I might still be having. So it helps in that way. I'll mention I continue to learn, so I'm learning that I could potentially work with organizations that offset any greenhouse gas emissions through my art transport. So I'm going to try to figure out how to maybe plant a tree for every order sent, those kinds of things. You know, we're always learning and growing and figuring new things out.
I love it. I love it. I'm so glad you were able to chat with me today.
Yeah, thanks so much.
So Jenny does, she has prints available on her website, but she also does commissioned art if anybody's interested. So tell us how everybody can find you.
Yes, so I am here on Instagram at Sageleaf Studio. I'm also online at thesageleafstudio.com where you can order prints, reach out to me about commissions. I want to mention that Earth Day is our biggest sale of the year, 25% off everything. Yes, and again, 10% of that goes back to wildlife conservation organizations. So that kicks off tomorrow through Monday. I'm really excited. So if there's anything that resonates with you on my website, now is the time to get it because it's not going to get any cheaper.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It was great chatting with you.
Yeah, it was great chatting with you too, Alex. And I look forward to learning so much more about your sustainable interior design too.
Thank you. We'll follow each other and we'll teach each other as we go.
That sounds great.
I've already learned so much, so thank you.
Thank you. Hope you have a great day.
You too.
Thanks. Bye.